Well, let's get started, everybody. I mentioned I do like to start on time. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so if you don't want your face out there at all, if you don't want your voice out there at all, make sure you go ahead and mute yourself on those pieces. The structure for this thing, we're gonna be flexible a little bit. I want your feedback on this, but to start, this is the first session, and the plan is to spend about an hour really digging in with our three experts on one specific question. Today, that question is, how do event planners find and decide on who their speakers are when they're not using a speaker bureau? So we've got three experts that you'll meet soon that are going to be talking about that particular question. So we'll spend about an hour where I'm just kind of asking them a lot of questions. We'll dialogue around that, dig deep into that, and then we'll have about 30 minutes where you guys can ask questions. So we can do that either live. We'll release your microphone, or you can go ahead and put that in the chat. But the first hour will just be the conversation, kind of like a podcast almost, that you can listen in on, and then the questions will come for about a half hour. And then we'll have about a half hour where it's just open mic time. We can just get to know each other or continue the conversation, whatever that looks like. So my request would be keep yourself muted if you can for this first hour, just so we can minimize our background noise. And then we'll get going there. I don't know why I have a thumbs up there. I think I use a lot of gestures, so apparently my thumbs up happens from time to time. So that's the structure of how this is going to work. And I mentioned, for those of you who have been following this and have been getting the information, I guess the way that I want this to look is really focusing on the content. So there's a lot of great groups for networking, for getting to know other people. For me, I always want the content. I want to roll up our sleeves, dig in deep, and then just trust that the networking side of it, the relationship building, will happen more organically. So I would strongly encourage you, if you see somebody on here that you want to connect with, do that, make those connections. But the focus of our time together is really content. So that's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's what I'm looking for, and it's what we're going to provide here as one of the differentiators. So with that, why don't I introduce the panel? You guys can go ahead and unmute yourself. So we have Amanda, Marie, and Nan, and I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit. So Amanda, why don't we just start with you? And if you guys have questions, comments, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll track as we go. I'll try to monitor everything. But Amanda, why don't we start with you? Just give us I guess a high-level summary of your involvement in event planning, what events you plan, what industry you're in, how many events, how many speakers, paid, unpaid. Just kind of give us a high-level view of your background and what you're involved with.
Sure. So my name is Amanda Jones. I am the Director of Operations Accounting at Delta Dental of Wisconsin. Most of you have heard of Delta Dental, probably have it for your dental insurance. But my role here is a little bit more on the finance side, but I am the president of the IASA Wisconsin chapter. So we do 2 events every year. And we look for speakers that are within our industry, but we also look for speakers that have more of that professional content. So we had Steve come and speak last year. He was absolutely phenomenal. I also got to hear him at IASA National, so a little plug to Steve there. So when we're looking at those items, when we're looking at speakers, we're really looking for someone who's going to engage the audience, who is going to bring good content, not just kind of like read off their PowerPoints and blah, blah, people get bored. Fun little giveaways are always a fun thing. I know, Steve, you gave your book away to a few people. Just really trying to have that engagement because let's face it, I'm an accountant and we're boring and, we need to spice things up a little bit. So those are the biggest things that we're looking at. I also sit on a board of a technical college here in our area, and we too have speakers come in, not only from the college, but from around, and just looking again for that content to be industry specific, but also really looking at how we can engage employees and our board to focus on maybe those structural things of you as a leader or as an organization of changes we can make, because let's face it, change is everywhere. So I guess that's kind of my overview of what we're looking for.
That's perfect. And I guess how many speakers per year would you say you bring in, whether paid or unpaid, both in terms of keynote and breakouts? Like, how many speakers are we talking about that you're looking for in a year?
Sure. So we, especially for IASA, we look at CPE content. So for those, we're bringing in, it has to be at least a 90-minute, usually between 45 minutes and 90 minutes, depending on the CPE credit. So we're looking at, we actually have a conference coming up here on Monday, and I believe we have 6 speakers. So for us, it's really, we focus majority on industry specific. So we do non-paid speakers for the industry specific because it's typically people that are members of our organization. But we always, almost always have a paid speaker that we look at for our keynote. So the person does a keynote that we pay for, and then they do a breakout. So it's usually the same person, but sometimes it'll be two. So I would say anywhere from 5 to 8 speakers per event.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great high level. We'll dig in deeper into how you find those folks, but that's great high
Sure.
level introduction. Nan, how about you? Why don't you introduce yourself and what you're involved with? I'll try not to call you Sunshine or Moonlight as we go.
I was going to say, can I call you that or are we? Yeah. So, hi, I'm Nan Boland. I run the Iowa Employment Conference. I own the Iowa Employment Conference and the Missouri Employment Conference, as well as an HR consulting and an HR recruiting firm. So, I have the Missouri Employment Conference next week. I had the Iowa one a couple weeks ago. I think content is similar to what Amanda said. We're the conferences we cover employment, law, training, benefits, and wellness, as well as leadership. And so our Iowa conference is a 2-day conference. We have 65 speakers. We have 2 keynotes and a closer. And our sessions are an hour long. So I think we have, do the math, I think that's, I don't know, 50, 60 sessions in a 2-day with Iowa. And we do the same in Missouri. And then in Iowa, we have a fall conference as well, where we have a keynote. We have, in Iowa, we have 6 sessions happening simultaneously throughout the 2-day time frame. We do that in Missouri as well. And then we have a 1-day fall conference where we have 5 sessions happening simultaneously throughout 1 day.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of stuff going on.
We got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I like to say that I'm crazy. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff going on. It's fantastic. I love what I do. I love these opportunities to just kind of talk to folks out there. So yeah, I can get into a lot more, or I'll just let you tell me what you're looking for.
We will. We'll get into a lot
I,
more and
I'd love
uh,
to know who's our audience here. Who are we talking to?
yeah, so I wish we had the time to kind of go around the room. That's not really my thing, but it's a lot of speakers. I mean, I know a lot of you personally, some of you I'm just meeting now.
Okay.
It's some people that are established speakers. They're in the business, they are doing speaking, they're looking to increase the number of events that they're doing or increase their fees, increase their spread. Some of them are doing that as their primary is as a speaker. Some of them are doing it as speaking to build the rest of their business. So whether it's a
Okay.
consulting firm or they have other offerings, so they want to speak to make the connections to do that. And some folks are just new to this whole thing. They're just getting into the speaking, or they're just exploring speaking, wondering if this is an avenue for them. So it's across the board, but I'd say most of the folks here are more on the newer side of the speaking industry. So that's why we're tackling some of these questions, because a lot of times sorry, I'm looking at the chat and stuff. A lot of times, we get all of this information on what we should do. And I always talk about we get should on all the time, right? Here's what we should do. We should, spend all of our time, building a business card and a website and a video, and all of those things are good. But I think also a lot of us have we have our own personalities, we have our own strengths, we have our own type of business we're trying to build. It's a very personal thing that we're trying to build. And so instead of just trying to figure out who do we attach ourselves to that's going to tell us all the things we have to do, what the purpose of this is really to try to reverse engineer it a little bit, to say, okay, how does the industry actually work? How do we actually get events? Instead of just saying, well, everybody should be making 5 phone calls a day or doing this, that, or the other. Let's figure out, how do you guys actually make decisions so that we can bring along our own personality, our own desires, our own goals, and create a strategy that works for us. So I guess that's who's in the group more or less. Feel free to add to the chat if that doesn't describe who you are. And that's kind of the goal of this whole thing. So yeah, we'll dig in deeper into all those things. Marie, why don't I give you a chance to introduce yourself? In full disclosure, I've worked with all three of these event planners, and that's why I handpicked them to come in because they're just awesome. They run great events, and I know that they're willing to give some great information. So Marie, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Maria Zan. My primary job is I work for the Metropolitan Council, but in the Avenue I do event planning. Was the president. I'm now past president of the Minnesota chapter of NIGP, which stands for National Institute of Governmental Procurement. So there's a national NIGP, and then each state has its own chapter. Some states are so large they have multiple chapters, but Minnesota, we're just one state of Minnesota. But we do 4 chapter meetings a year where we have a professional speaker. We do a spring conference, which is usually like about a half-day conference. And usually there we have a combination of maybe 3 to 4 speakers. And then every fall we have a 2-day conference where we bring in a plethora of different speakers. It depends on how long they speak to how many speakers we have, but it is a 2-day event. And kind of like I think Amanda said, we do the continuing education. So depending on how long people speak, that equates to how many continuing education credits. And we like to have around like 16 credits available if you're attending a 2-day conference. So that's kind of the background of the different events the Minnesota chapter does. So it's those 4 chapter meetings. We do a professional speaker about 90 minutes. We try to balance out with a very procurement specific speaker one meeting, and then more of a motivational, inspirational speaker for the next meeting. So we try to kind of alternate chapter meetings, and then at the spring conference or fall conference, very similar. We try to have a balance of very interesting, intriguing procurement topics, along with more overall arching themes, inspirational ways to be a better leader, ways to be a better communicator. Those are what we call them our soft skill speakers, just to keep everyone engaged, because you can't talk about procurement really for 2 days and it's totally standardized. So that's my background.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I think the first thing to point out to everybody that's in attendance is all three of these folks have real jobs. Like they're doing event planning, but especially as we're getting started out, a lot of the folks that we're working with aren't doing event planning full time. So Nan's doing consulting, Amanda's at Delta Dental, Marie's with METC. So they all have these jobs that they're doing. So the event planning is sort of on the side. And I think that's an important thing to realize as speakers is that their time is incredibly valuable. They're incredibly busy people. If you've ever done event planning, it's very difficult. And so just kind of understanding that context of that as we are trying to engage with event planners, how we engage with event planners, realizing these are really busy people and they're not just sitting around waiting for our phone calls. So that's always the question. It's like, how do we actually interact with them? So we'll get into that a little bit. And also with the three of them, notice that they're in very different industries, and that's intentional for our conversation today. We've got Nan in HR, we've got Amanda in the insurance, Marie in the government procurement area. So hopefully a broad swath that gives us a few insights into that. Let me ask this of the panel. And again, if you're just joining us, we're going to spend this first hour more interview style, digging deep, and then we'll have time for Q&A when we hit about 1 o'clock Central. That's when we'll hit some of the Q&A. So save your questions. You'll have an opportunity to ask them. But as we get into this, let me ask you three. We're not going to get into how it works with bureaus, but are the three of you actually using bureaus for some of your speakers or not at all? Why don't you go ahead and just unmute and answer that?
No.
Marie, we use the speaker bureau a lot. Otherwise, it's a word of mouth or recommendation from chapter members or other governmental agencies. But I think it was 2 years ago, the Minnesota Bureau reached out to us, their current president, and partnered with us, which was, I think, very beneficial for them and very beneficial for us. So we do refer to the Bureau a lot to try to just where to go. Because for us, you're elected to the board. You might have any experience ever securing your speaker. So it's a volunteer board. You're elected to it. You may have never planned any sort of event, let alone obtain a professional speaker. So that's really when we hand off like the president role to the new president or the vice president. We like to give them that speaker bureau as kind of a starting point, because some people, they have no idea where to find a speaker.
Yep. And today we're going to talk specifically about how do you choose speakers but without involving a bureau. But I kind of want to paint that picture of how bureaus are involved in your model. So thank you, Marie. How about you, Amanda?
Yeah, I would say the same thing when we are looking first we want to go word of mouth, kind of known speakers that have a good reputation is kind of what we go for. Depending on what industry you're into, those, when we're looking at industry specific, we'll tend to reach out to the members of our organization. I'm very similar to Marie where, well, the state of Wisconsin has its own chapter for IASA, which stands for Insurance, Accounting, and Systems Association. It's a mouthful. So we do that for Wisconsin, but then we have a national as well. So we actually have our national conference coming up in St. Louis the first week in June, and we actually have 40 speakers for that. So what we do on that is the presidents of each of the states, or sometimes it's like a Midwest versus just Wisconsin. So for Wisconsin as president, then I sit on an advisory board for the national conference on the accounting and finance side to get those speakers in. And then when we get to national, then we go in as presidents or as whomever is a volunteer, because it is a volunteer board, an unpaid volunteer board. Marie's chuckling. So we do that, and then I actually mediate some of those speakers. So I'm actually mediating coming up here in June. I'm actually mediating 4 of our sessions. So we go in, we introduce the speakers, we get to know them prior to going there, which actually, it actually gives us a good idea too of getting to know the speakers, but as well, they can sometimes give us suggestions for other speakers that they've worked with as well. So it's again that word of mouth, but we do have to go to the bureau every once in a while too, just because it's a struggle to get speakers. I will say that is one of our hardest things is actually getting speakers.
Which is, yeah, thank you for that. We'll dig in more kind of the word of mouth and how you find people. But it's always interesting, I think, and some of us in the group might be going, what do you mean it's hard to find speakers? We're right here. We're right here. But I hear that from every event planner. It's just really hard to get speakers. And so that's part of why I want to dig into this today, because I feel like there's this disjoint with all the speakers saying, what do you mean? I'm available. I got 200 dates on my calendar I'm available for. And event planners are saying it's hard to find speakers. And so we're trying to reverse engineer this and figure out why is there such a disjoint? So thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you're getting this together, because I know at least on the national side, we're trying to get, with all the different chapters and who they work with, a list of speakers that we can all use. So, this is amazing. So once we get like what you're working on too, this is going to be phenomenal for not just Wisconsin, but nationally, all the IASA organizations. So I'm super excited.
Good. And that's one of the things I'm hoping for is look down the road at this. We're just piloting this to see if there's, not everything fits everybody, to see if my style is acceptable to people. But, I'd love for this to create like a community of this, which becomes a resource of speakers for people like you that aren't going to spend $30,000 on every speaker. But hey, who do you have that are good speakers? So I'd love to create some kind of a community around that as well. Nan, how about you? I know, well, what's your situation with bureaus?
Yeah, I don't really have much experience with bureaus at all. At one point, I think Midwest Bureau reached out to me. I'm in probably a different boat than these guys. I've owned a recruiting firm for 20 years in Central Iowa, and I've kind of moved on into Missouri as well. But I do HR consulting as well. And so for me, when I built these conferences, the Iowa is 18 years old, the Iowa Employment Conference, and so when they were being built, it was really a networking. I work with nonprofit, for-profit, and municipalities on my recruiting side and on my HR consulting side. And so for me, it was, how do I get everybody in the same room to hear the same thing? Because they were all hearing, I'm hearing the struggles with, again, most of mine is HR-ish folks. So their struggle is, God, the employment laws change every day, all that fun stuff. So my thought was, how do I get all of my network in one room? We offer 12 different accreditations at my conferences. And so it has become a monster of its own. It's just getting the CEs is painful. But it's been, for me, it's been more about the network. Definitely I've had a decent size of network in the HR world because I've done that for 25, 30 years and I'm only 18. And but also LinkedIn has been fantastic. But it's sort of, once you meet Steve, I've met a lot of wonderful speakers like Steve over the years, then it's sort of a networking thing. Steve will introduce me to somebody and somebody will introduce me to Steve, and then it just becomes this really fun. I talked to a new speaker this morning. It's just fun. So yes, I do have a real job, but this is like my fun job. So I'm lucky to have a network with my Iowa Employment Conference. I usually get between 100 and 200 speaker registration forms in. So we are at a different place than you guys in that we get a lot of folks wanting to speak at our conference. And I think that's probably because maybe we have, I don't know, it's been going on for a really long time and I'm not a new volunteer every single year. So like you guys are, and that's painful. Just learning the whole process, because putting on an event is a lot of work. So
Yeah,
it
for
just maybe a
the
little
draw
bit.
for you guys too, get in front of all these HR people, which, for a lot of people that want to speak more or their business model, it's getting in front of the right people. So you guys run a great thing there. I know it's sort of like the SHRM opportunity for people that don't want to spend as much money on SHRM as SHRM costs. And you guys do a great job. I've been to both Iowa and Missouri, and it's awesome. So let's talk a little bit now about you've all mentioned sort of word of mouth in some regard, and I do want to. Hey, Oliver, if you could mute, that would be awesome. Good to see you on here, my brother. If I'm gonna have to mute him. But let's talk a little bit about word of mouth. I do want to get into some specific sources that I know we're all trying, but you guys have, all three of you mentioned word of mouth. So talk a little bit more about that. Now, obviously, if we are as speakers sort of in that network of people that are talking about each other, and in that we're in, but what about the speakers that aren't in your network of word of mouth people? How do we break into this thing? What do we need to know about how you're hearing about speakers from other people that's going to help us who are trying to break into this?
I would say, like, to Nan's point, LinkedIn is huge. That we will do I know I do a search to see if there are any speakers out there. I think Google, honestly, looking to see if there's anything out there. It kind of depends on what we're looking for. If it's something that is more professional development related, then I will tend to lean out to either coworkers in prior lives or different organizations that I've been a part of to see if they have any suggestions. When it becomes more of that industry specific, I really reach out and lean on our different boards that are around the nation, as well as our clients that we have within the membership, because they tend to have someone they know who's given a presentation on XYZ.
So when you say Google search or LinkedIn search, what are you searching for? Like if it's just sort of this opening search, like what are you
Right. So I
typing into
usually,
typing into the search bar?
mostly it's like either professional development, motivational speaking. If we're looking for a specific topic, I know right now remote work and work from home, like during COVID, that was a huge thing. So we're doing a lot of research on that. Wellness has been a hot topic, especially mental health wellness. So that's something that we've really been focusing on lately. So those are kind of the keywords I'm looking for. If someone can give either a personalized story, whether they've had a situation, family member, anyone that has gone through something significant, those are those kind of keywords I'm looking for. It's probably not the best way to do it. I'm sure there's probably a better way, but you're just kind of scrapping at some point to find speakers that are willing to come in and do their thing. So,
Nan Marie, anything to add there?
Just with the Google, my caveat is I usually put Minnesota because we don't have a lot of money necessarily for speakers. The most of the budget goes towards fall conference, spring conference, and then what's left for our chapter meetings isn't very substantial. So I look local first, trying to think about like mediating, travel costs. So I always put Minnesota in mind. And then it is like I do reach out what other government agencies have had someone come that was, advantageous. And much like we kind of said, once you meet Steve, he connects you with people. I know that we had Frank Kitchen speak for us, and he helped. He's the one who got me connected with the Minnesota Bureau. So it feels like once we get one of those, speakers we really connect with, we go back to them too and ask for advice. But I still Google. I usually just, only difference is I put Minnesota in there, trying to make sure I don't get somebody that's, needing to fly in from a foreign country. So that's the only other caveat. But yeah, I use Google. I will say I don't use LinkedIn a lot. Our chapter is not the best on the whole social media front, and I'm pretty sure our LinkedIn page is very out of date, the Minnesota chapter of IGP. So I'm not using LinkedIn, but I do use Google. Otherwise, it's going back to previous speakers we had a positive experience with, or reaching out to other chapter members or board members for suggestions.
I love that. I love it. A quick caveat too. I'm getting there's a lot of stuff in the chat, which is great. I'm getting a number of direct messages too, which I will respond to when I have an opportunity. I just want to make sure if you intended that to be for the whole group, make sure you have the setting set to the whole group in that. But send me all the direct messages. I just can't respond to them now. But feel free to do the chat to everybody there as well. Thank you. Nan, how about you? I mean, Google, LinkedIn?
Yeah. All of it.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah. Well, I like to say that I'm a professional stalker. And that really comes from my recruiting world too, right? But it really comes down to me is network. I definitely am constantly reaching out to anyone I know, the Steves of the world, who have I talked to before? Who do you know? Who have you seen? And I think we'll get into a little bit more of how we select in a little bit, but definitely a lot of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is huge for me and my crew. But we're Twitter, we're Facebook, but we also Google, just like Amanda said and Marie said. It's looking up keynote speakers. It's looking in the content of what you're looking for. In mine, it's employment, training, benefits, and wellness, which those are pretty large topics. So definitely we have a bigger focus than maybe some of you guys, but yeah, I do all of that. I don't think there's a magic potion. I think it's just like I'm a stalker. I am constantly looking for new folks to talk to. I thank God the Zoom has really become a huge thing, because I get to talk to a lot of people that I normally just wouldn't go have coffee with. So I do this daily and I love it.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, we'll talk more about how you actually make the selection. So this is good.
Yeah.
It's like this first step of how do you get the pool of people to consider for speaking. So that's what we're talking about. So we mentioned the Google search, mentioned LinkedIn for two of you. Are there other social media platforms that you use for looking for speakers? Any of you?
I also look at TED Talks all the time.
Yeah, same.
Yep.
And we actually, on the ISA national side, we actually do a call for content. So all of the leaders in ISA in the states are tasked with trying to find content that is relevant to our industry, but also relevant to professional development. So when we get those, then we can submit what we feel would be a good speaker, and then that can be approved.
But neither of you are necessarily using Instagram or YouTube or other than TED Talks or TikTok or anything like that necessarily?
YouTube, I definitely look at YouTube a lot.
You search for speakers there then?
Yeah.
You do. How about you, Marie?
I can't say that I've ever been on TikTok. So
go ahead, Amanda. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I've never been on TikTok, so I can't say that one.
Okay. I'll do an ice bucket challenge for you.
Yeah.
Marie?
I'm not a big social media person. The dog got Instagram, and that's the only reason I have Instagram. So I don't use a lot of the social media platforms. We do have a Facebook page for the Minnesota chapter of NIGP, and it's somewhat up to date, but we're pretty conservative, being government affiliated, that everything we put out is very procurement related and very transparent, and nothing that could ever be seen as, not appropriate for government. So we as a chapter kind of are pretty conservative with using social media, so that I haven't personally reached out to use a lot of those avenues to look for speakers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So okay, so we talked about word of mouth a bit, and you guys all kind of touched on it a little bit as far as the network of people that you use. Anything there to elaborate on as far as how like how word of mouth is used? And I guess is that kind of like, is that the driving force? Is that who takes priority when you start talking about, really considering people is who you've heard from other people that you trust? Nan?
Uh, I guess I'll speak up. I think definitely word of mouth is huge. If you've talked to somebody, I'm constantly looking at the SHRM conferences. I'm looking at all of my competitors. Who do they have? Uh, and then I look at the feedback. Was Steve good? What was this feedback about Steve? I'll call other event planners and ask them, hey, how was Steve? I'll look to see if Steve has had a TED Talk, or if he's got a website where I can look and I can watch his video and have a conversation with him before I get any further down that road. But I think networking is huge, but also looking at the competitors, who's doing what.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard that before too, where you can kind of look at other conferences and say, all right, who was on here? Who's got topics that look interesting
Yep.
as well. Go ahead, Amanda.
I would say the same thing, kind of stalking those other conferences to see who they have. And like sometimes you can see what the ratings are of the other conferences, but to me, the word of mouth is probably our first go-to, especially industry specific. So if we're looking for something on auditing an insurance company, I'm going to reach out to first my audit firm and then other audit firms that I know in the area. But for like a motivational speaker, it's either word of mouth or maybe something like, I know, Steve, I recommended you for our Wisconsin chapter because I saw you at National and I thought you were amazing. So I think it's more of those type of word of mouth than and actually personal experience.
And just a point there too before Marie jumps in. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously I've worked with all these people, so there's a little bit of bias there too. But I did the national one for IASA, and I did a breakout session for two different national conferences for free. And I know there's a lot of folks that say don't speak for free. That's their prerogative, and some of you might be some of them or whatever. But in this case, it led to a paid event with Wisconsin, and so there is, when you start talking about word of mouth, who do you know, networking, groups like this, other groups, that's so critical because yeah, people are always asking me, the event planners are always asking me, who else do you know? And I mean, that's huge. So if you can get connected with other speakers, but also the whole speaking for free thing in my world, paying the dues that way has opened a ton of doors for that, because they're going to say, well, let's look at the breakout sessions, whatever it was, 60 breakouts or whatever it might have been in IASA National. What were the ratings? Were you good? And oh, is that somebody that we could consider for a chapter? So just a little bit of my own thoughts interjected there. Marie, what are you thinking?
So when I say word of mouth, we're always looking at what other agencies have, what's come to their agency. But when it comes to technical, we're kind of very specific and obviously who has the procurement certifications looking for, but more of those motivational, inspirational. We do ask every time we have chapter meeting or we have an event, we do a post survey. So we ask what people think of that speaker, and we also then say, do you have recommendations for any others? Because it is a hard thing to find. So we also want to make sure we're picking speakers that are going to drive attendance. So we're always trying to go back to our chapter members and say, hey, do you have any suggestions? Because hopefully if you suggest it, that means you'll come to the meeting or the event. So that's a big driver, is we try to do those post communications, say, what do you think? And then if do you have any suggestions for the future? And we usually start there. So if there's suggestions, we start with those speakers, reach out to them, see if they're available, more importantly in budget. And then if we don't get a lot of those, so that might only cover a third of what we have. And then after that, it's kind of where do we look? We do have obviously our national NIGP, and we do sometimes try to take some of the speakers they've had at that national level, but a lot of times they're out of our budget. And we also don't want to necessarily, yes, speakers have lots of different topics, but my experience sometimes is if someone sees that name, they're like, oh, I already heard from them. So we do try to not duplicate too much. And even in our own schedules from year to year, if we had someone last year, it's very unlikely we're probably going to bring them back the next year. Even though you have a plethora of topics to speak from, our members seem to see that name and be like, oh, I heard from them. So we try to alternate and not necessarily have the same people all the time to keep it fresh and try to drive attendance. because we personally are struggling now that we're back to a world where you can be in person. We are struggling to get people to come in person. So.
Mm-hmm. So I know we could spend hours talking about how the sourcing of all this sort of thing. Hopefully this helps paint the picture. I want to get into how do you make decisions. But before I do that, I have one more question about sourcing. I'd like to ask each of you just to kind of give your thoughts on, and we've alluded to it a little bit, but I guess part 1A of this is, do you use call for speakers? And then the second part of it is, do any of you use sort of those, what I call the matchmaking apps that people have, whether it's Gig Salad, the Bash, Speaker Match, eSpeakers, some of those, those websites where we can put a profile and get found on there. So I guess I want each of the three of you to answer that. Like, do you use call for speakers? And then do you use any of those, do you search any of those apps looking for speakers? Amanda?
To be honest, I was unfamiliar with that, so no, I have not.
Okay.
So, I mean, great that there's something like that out there. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I'll share. So I like, for example, just to interject a little bit, some of you are familiar with these. So I have thebash.com. Gig Salad is another one. Those are the two that I'm active on right now. I have used Speaker Match in the past. So for Amanda, for you, there's other places to find potential speakers. I also officiate weddings and I use Thumbtack for that. I know some people actually have a speaker profile out there. So just give you a few different resources there.
He was on TV.
I know my whole chapter was really pumped because you were at our meeting in January, and then the debut on TV came out, and you wouldn't believe. Did you know our speaker was on? I was like,
That's
yes,
funny.
yes, that's why I did.
For those of you who don't know, yeah, I was an officiant on Love Is Blind, so kind of a random little thing. So it's kind of a fun thing to put into the talk. So thanks for that. Nan, how about you? Using RFPs, call for speakers, and then any of those apps?
I've never heard of any of those.
Okay.
So I wrote them all down. I've never heard of them. I think that's interesting. I had to know there was something out there, but again, I'm maybe a little bit different in that I've been doing this for a long time. And so I definitely have an RFP, and I have a list of several hundred speakers that I've created over the years. And so I kind of pick and choose who I send that out to and kind of build the conference according to that employment training benefits and wellness tracks.
Okay. Marie, how about you?
We've done the call for speakers or RFP. As I said before, our board is volunteered and you're elected. So some of the past vice presidents and presidents have come from more robust agencies. Some of you might have heard Sourcewell. They're a cooperative here in Minnesota and they are huge on their procurement street and they have lots of money and they do lots of things. So a couple of our past board members have been from Sourcewell and they use that kind of RFPs model to get some of the keynote larger speakers for our fall conference. And they did that because they had experience in doing that for other events at their agency. That was new to most of us other people in government. So we've done that a couple times. I had no idea. Once again, I'm not on the up and up on the guest on the tech. So I did not know there were matchmaking things. So I wrote those down as well because I didn't know those existed.
Well, maybe we'll do a session on those at some point too. Yeah. So as far as event planners go, I've gotten a number of events through those. So it is a nice resource if you can get your way through all the junk that's probably out there. Okay. So I guess real quick, I want to follow up with the call for speaker thing because I think a number of us speakers have this question. First of all, if I fill out a call for speaker, does it actually go to somebody or is it just out in the void somewhere? I know your answer, but that's how it feels sometimes. And secondly to that, do I need to fill one out each year? Or if I fill one out 1 year, am I going to be considered for the future? I guess, how do each of you three handle that? We can kind of make this a quick response on this one. Nan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. It goes to my team, but it also comes to me, and I am the one that responds to every single one of them. I want to talk to every single speaker that submits. And I'm not sure who said it before, maybe Amanda. I definitely will have repeat speakers. And I know that's kind of off the beaten question there, but I will have repeat speakers based on the topics, the content, and we also have 60 sessions happening over a 2-day time frame. So if they're a good speaker and they've got great content and the survey says they're fantastic, I'm having them back. So that's mine. And
Yeah.
thanks, Karen. I've been seeing your notes. I'll talk to you later, whoever Karen is. Oh, hi, Karen.
Yeah, I
Amanda,
would
what do you
say,
think?
yeah, we would do a repeat, I believe. I don't know that we would do it. We'd probably wait like a year because we do the two Wisconsin chapter events, and so those are in typically April, May, and then an October, November timeframe. But then our national is always the first week of June. So I think we would like, especially for national, we'd probably wait a year at least, or so two conferences so that it's not a repeat unless it's maybe breakout sessions, because those you can pick or choose which ones you go to. So I would think that we would definitely do a repeat if it was a good speaker.
And the call for speakers, they actually go to a person
They
that
would go to me.
okay. I say that in jest, but I think there's part of that. It
Yep.
almost feels like you fill out a job application on Indeed.com and you're like, who knows? You just
It's
it
going
feels
to AI.
and those call for speakers, a lot of times they're not easy, right? They take a lot of time because they're all different and it's like, is this even worth it? But for your two cases, what I'm hearing is no, we do take a look at them. Okay.
No, the call for
Great.
speakers would go to whoever is requesting it. So it would be usually the role of the vice president or president. It would go back to them. We are trying to create a better succession planning with our chapter. So this year we did something called the board boot camp, which was a whole day where the new board members met with the outgoing board members. We've created flash drives and we're trying to transfer information. So this year's vice president and this year's president got my last 12 years of notes on speakers, event stuff. So they have that historical knowledge to start with. Because as I said, volunteer board, some of these people have never planned anything. So they don't know where to start. So trying to make sure you at least give them the background to start with. But kind of, I said it before, but with what Amanda said, we do try to rotate. We don't bring a lot of dupes back just because we're always trying to drive attendance, which means if you spoke recently, you might be on hiatus for a year, but we'll probably bring you back if you did a good job. But it's probably going to be a year between speaking engagements.
All right, good stuff. So we're going to get to the point where we're actually saying, okay, how do you actually make the decision on who your speakers are and are not? I guess the step before that for me is, are there any filters? I guess, you get all these, responses for call for speakers, the people that have recommended people to you. You kind of have this whole source of people now, each of you have for all of the events. And ultimately you want to get to the point where you're making decisions. But are there any filters along the way that say, okay, here's the things that if they're not there, if this isn't there, or if I see something particular, we're automatically going to filter somebody out or automatically filter somebody in. You know what I mean by that? Like, in a job, it might be like, well, they have to have a 3.5 GPA or whatever. Are there any things that you guys have, whether it's, yeah, Andrea's like, yeah, sweet. Are there any like filters that you have? You know what I mean by that? Like either it's, if they don't have a video, they're out, or if they've done this, they're in. Like any of those things that kind of help you pare down the original group of people?
I wouldn't say we have I don't have a checklist, so to speak. We're similar to Marie, where we're a bit of a conservative group. So I think it depends on what the topic is. And we kind of, at least from a board perspective, try to read our audience to know, we know them pretty well of what they would accept and not accept. So I think there's a little bit of a fine line there. I personally like to look at the presentation ahead of time so that I know what to expect and then make a decision from there. Because I think if you don't know, it doesn't have to be concrete, but if you don't know what the person's going to be speaking about, it's hard to make that decision. Because they can say they're going to be speaking about one thing, and then if it kind of derails to another topic, then that makes it a little bit difficult.
So does that mean in terms of wanting to see video or?
Yeah, like a video, or if you have a PowerPoint presentation, or if you can give, an example of something, of a speech that you've given before. I know, Steve, you have some on your website. That gives us an idea of kind of what your vibe is, how interactive you are. I think it helps us as planners to understand what to expect, because as a board, especially as president, it's going to fall on me if something goes astray. So I want to make sure that I'm buffering any potential situation that might come up.
Yeah, and I've heard, for a lot of event planners, I've heard this message before where it sometimes just kind of comes down to risk management too. Because like you said, if you get a speaker, they come in and they're terrible or they're offensive or whatever it might be, that falls on the event planner. So sometimes there's this, we just want to make sure they're safe. We want them to be compelling and engaging, but they also have to be safe for us to bring in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nana Marie, anything for you guys in terms of filters?
Yeah,
Not really. Go ahead.
go ahead.
The one thing I was gonna say, I like to see like a summary of what the topic is, but then I know that our attendees love to know what the learning objectives are. So like, what is the outcome after they hear you speak? What are the things that they should be kind of like take away, or that's a big sell. And it's also, being in government, it's a sell sometimes for them to go to their own managers to attend a meeting or a conference, like, hey, these are the objectives that are going to come out if I attend. So that's always a nice thing I like to see, along with just the summary of the topic, because having that usually lets me know that I will have the appropriate things to make a decision, but as well as the attendees will have the appropriate information to maybe make the sell to be able to attend.
That's good. Nan? I'm hearing some background noise too. I don't know if that's somebody can mute if they're not speaking. Nan, how about you? Any filters?
I think the initial is I definitely will look at a video. I'll see if I can find something live. But I talk to every single one of my speakers. I have the conversations. And for me, of course, content is important. Can I get CEs with it? That's important. But for me too, when we have 60 sessions happening over a 2-day time frame, people slip into a coma. That's a lot of information. And so I look for, of course, content, CEs, but I look for the personality. I look for somebody who's not going to read a PowerPoint. They will have one typically, so somebody can look up and see, but I need that entertainment factor too. I want it to have somebody that jumps out, that's going to be like, I'm not just want like the Peanuts teacher, like it's want, like, and that's hard because we also cover a lot of employment law, right? And that's just boring. Let's just be honest. But and so going back to, I will have plenty of my employment lawyers back because they're fantastic people. They're really good at what they do, and also they have that good entertainment factor. So for me, entertainment has to be part of it, as well as the given. They have to have their learning points, and we have to be able to get CEs. And in our case, we submit every single 65 of our speakers, topic, summary, learning points for 12 different accreditations. So we're trying to get every single one of our instructors, speakers, credits. So yeah, our list is sort of like, I kind of want it all.
Yeah.
And I would say too, on the entertainment factor, I love it because we always joke that we have to have like a fun speaker after lunch, because first of all, what we're talking about is boring. And second of all, you just ate, so you want to nap, not to listen to somebody else talk. So we try to get that like super engaged speaker to be our first one after lunch, because sometimes by the end of that you start losing people. They still need the CP, so they're going to stay there and they're going to ride it out. But at the same time, you want them to actually get something out of it.
Yeah, I would agree. The keynote has to kick it off with some serious entertainment and content. And then after lunch, and then the very end of the day too. These people are in a coma. They're like, holy God, if I have to sit through one more session. So it has to be, the entertainment factor is pretty high up there.
And what I'm hearing from, or go ahead, Marie, go ahead.
I was to chime in. We also keep in mind some of our chapter meetings we only do one chapter meeting in person. The rest are all virtual. And then obviously our conferences are in person, but we're also looking for something different. Like, you really need to stand out when you're virtual. So like the virtual person, we're going to look for the person that might even come off a little obnoxious, because once you have to go through the camera and distract people from working, you need that really loud person. So we're going to pick our loudest person probably for virtual, because that's where it's the hardest, I feel, to create that engagement, because you already have people passively listening. So you really need that person that's going to pull them in, distract them from their work on their other screen. So that's our one caveat when we're looking for virtual. That is a different little lens than in person, because in person, it's much easier to create that engagement, call out people from the audience. It's very hard to do in a virtual side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would say the same too. Like even when we're doing in person, at the beginning of the meeting, we always so as president, I kick off everything, give a little chapter update, yada, yada. But then I also say, like we're all here. We all know we need the CPE for a reason, but try to be engaged. Try to turn off your phones, try to turn off your computers. We have break time that you can check your emails. If you have to take an emergency call, absolutely go out, but really trying to buffer that for the speakers too, to say, you're here for a reason. Like you're not here to passively listen. You're here to actually engage with not only the speaker, but with also your peers. And this is a networking event. I think so many people go to these events for CPE for the specific ones I'm in. But really, for me, the biggest piece I get out of any of these conferences is the networking. I have met so many amazing people, from mentors to new systems to just awesome people. Like there's definitely that part of it that needs to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Good. And somebody mentioned in the chat too, the entertainment piece. And I know that's for a lot of speakers is like, I'm not an entertainer. I'm providing content and insights and all of those things. And I get it because I'm a recovering actuary. So I get the idea that you just want to share information, right? The more the better. But what a lot of us have had to learn is that there is an element of entertainment that comes with it, an element of engagement that people are looking for because of that, because you could have the greatest information ever, but packaged in a way that's 5% of the people are engaging with, you're just not going to get rebooked. You're not going to get referred. And so I think that is part of it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that's part of our job, is to make sure that we package things in a way that is entertaining, that is compelling. So I know we've got about 10 minutes before we open it up to questions, and I'll have a million questions if you guys don't have any, so don't feel pressure to have questions. But I guess the last two things I wanted to really pick your guys' brains on is, okay, so we've talked a little bit about how you gather the people that you're going to consider, a little bit about the filters of how, maybe you're in or out, and then how you make the decisions, which is really around what you're talking about, all the things that you've mentioned. So you can talk more about that, but I'm really curious what your advice is to the speakers that are listening to this live, people that'll be watching this on video. How do you get on your radar? If they know somebody that knows somebody, great, but what would you recommend, Amanda, Nan, Marie, how do us as speakers get on your radar, knowing that you have other jobs and that you've got a million people that would love to speak at your stages? And I would highly recommend all three of these stages, honestly, all three of these groups. How do we get on your radar? And then what is it that we can do to differentiate ourselves so that we are chosen when you are making that final decision? So I guess what advice would you have for us?
I know a few people have already reached out to me on LinkedIn. I think that would be the best way to reach out to me. Happy to share my work email with you guys, all my details in the chat as well, that you can reach out to me directly. I would say to put yourself in the forefront. Again, it's that entertainment factor, it's the energy, it's having that presentation or that video ready for me to look at. And maybe just give me a 50,000-foot overview of what you're going to speak on. And like, for me, I want to get to know you as a person. So like, what are you passionate about? Why did you get into speaking? Just give me that kind of background. I know sometimes that's hard for people to do, but I am a people person to my core and absolutely love giving back. So my passion is that giving back. I do a lot of volunteer work, a lot of for different organizations through my church, through my kids' school, all that kind of stuff. So just really getting to know that person on a personal level as well, I think is helpful.
And so you're saying the first point of contact would be LinkedIn or email, or
LinkedIn or email.
And as an event planner, you're not offended by people, because I know, it can be overwhelming. You're okay with people reaching out directly and saying, here's what I'm all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the only way you really can. I mean, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit, but at least you give that opportunity to the person to say yay or nay.
Love it. Nan?
Yeah, I would agree. LinkedIn definitely is huge. If you link in with me, my email, all my content, all my information, my cell phone, everything is out there. You can find me, you can Google my name and you can find me. That being said, I am crazy busy. Well, maybe just crazy, but also busy. I said I'm a stalker, like stalk me, like send me your stuff, make sure that, your content pertains, to what we're looking for. But again, I love this. I love getting to know people. And maybe Boland. My last name is Boland. Sorry,
I just put it
B-O-L-A.
in there. Yep.
Sorry, I just put my Nan. I'm like
She's like
Madonna,
Cher.
Cher. You just,
She's
yep,
like
totally. Yep.
Taylor, Madonna.
Nan.
It's just
Yeah,
Nan.
that's just me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I do joke about that. But anywho, yeah, so it's Boland, Nan Boland. I'm on LinkedIn. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. And then I definitely want to have a conversation with you.
And I have like one of the most common names on the planet, both first and last. So I'll send the information in the chat.
Great. And just so you guys know, I will have all their contact information as well. So feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you as well. Marie, how about you?
I'm gonna say everything that Nan and Amanda said, yes, but like step one, it's very helpful if you're on like one of those bureaus because often that's where people start, especially if we haven't worked with you before. So that's kind of like a starting off point. Usually you look through there, and then decision making for us is like like, is it a fit? Does it fit our budget, and are you available? Because sometimes even if we really like you, we have a little flexibility. We try to get out in front of our speakers well in advance. That being said, we are a volunteer board, so it varies from year to year. But for the most part, try to get out there in advance, have everyone kind of earmarked. So if there's someone we really want to have speak, especially at one of the spring conferences or our fall conference, we have general idea of when those are, fall and spring, but they're not like set that it has to be the third Thursday in May. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but is it the fit? Our budget comes into play, and then we do have a little bit of flexibility with the actual date. But we start looking at a big list, and then if we see people that we think are going to be a fit, then we reach out and do those more personal steps. But to start, it's helpful, especially with, in my case, volunteer board, transitioning different roles every year. We have been directing people to those bureaus just because it's a kind of a place to start that isn't just necessarily Googling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, anything else you guys want to share on, the stuff that we've covered so far before I open it up to the group for questions? Anything else that's kind of burning or like a question you wish I would have asked you all that you could have responded to? I see none. So why don't we go ahead and if you want to put your question in the chat, that's great. If you want to just raise your hand, I will open up your mic in that order. So who's got questions for the illustrious panel? Sig, go ahead.
Thank you so much for doing this, Steve, and thank you to the people that hire speakers for giving us your insights. I heard you talk about continuing ed quite a bit. So my question's for Steve as well as for you. Steve, do you have any content that qualifies for continuing ed? If you do, can you talk a little bit about that? And then from the others, I'd love to hear, what are you looking for in continuing ed credits?
Yeah, I mean, I have a content that can be manipulated to qualify if that makes sense. So I think at least with Amanda and Nan, I believe in both of your cases, maybe Marie, there's some requirements that they have for continuing ed credit. So I made sure that I touched on some of that, or I dug deeper into things like hiring and some of those pieces, so it would qualify for continuing ed. So it was working with the event planner to make sure that it qualified for what their requirements were. So yeah, you can kind of retrofit it in. There's some things that I actually added into a presentation to make sure that it would qualify for that. Mm-hmm.
I would say, like I said before, I don't really have a checklist of it. We do have some specifications as far as time of the length of your presentation, and then it has to be approved. We work through our national IASA, who works with, it's a company called the Institutes, and they have to go through and approve your presentation.
Yep. And I think just to reiterate too, I think like with Amanda's case, I believe I did a keynote and a breakout. And so I think if I remember right, the keynote did not need to have the continuing ed, but the
That's
breakout
correct.
did. So,
Yep.
it's a matter of kind of morphing that one.
And I would just add too, we offer 12 different accreditations at our conference. And so the criteria is all different from all of them. And some of them don't give credit for a keynote session. I don't know why. But definitely all of our keynotes, we work with our speakers. If you've never been approved before, We definitely work with our keynotes. If you submit your, your title, your session, your summary, your learning points, all that fun stuff, and we think, okay, it's a good topic, but I don't think it's going to get approved. I've got a gal in my back pocket who has every letter after her name, and this is what she loves to do. So she will say, you know what, I think Steve's session is great, but we need to add, strategic blah, blah, blah to it. And so then we'll rewrite it. We'll send it to Steve and say, Steve, is this okay? Can you change your session to include some of these key words and this verbiage or this content? And so many of our speakers have never been accredited before, but many of them will be accredited by 12 different accreditations after our conference.
Mm-hmm. Marie?
Ours follows kind of the same thing. Keynote doesn't need to be accredited. The other ones, once we know who is our speaker, we give it over to our secretary, who's the one that gives out the certificates for like continuing education credits, and we run it by her. And that right now it's her, but that position is the position that makes the determination if it's available for continuing education credits. And that was a change to our board. For a long time, it was just if you spoke, everyone got continuing education credits for it. And then there was a little bit more reading of letter of the law of what continuing education credits mean. And so now we have determined that secretary role will do that little review and make the determination if the speaker is available for continuing education credits, and then can go on the certificates that attendees get.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sig, for the question. Zoe, we'll come back to your question just because there's kind of a follow-up here. Lena had mentioned, should you use accreditations when promoting programs?
I think if you have the accreditation, I mean, shout it out. You don't necessarily need to, but it doesn't hurt when looking at speakers. Most of ours, we don't need accreditation. Like I said, it just needs to be approved by our national. But for the most part, like, you worked hard for it, do it.
Nana Marie, any other thoughts on that?
I would agree. If you have it, it doesn't hurt to put it on there to make it available and transparent right up front.
Okay.
I would say the same thing.
Okay. So Zoe had two questions. Let me just read them both and you can respond. And I see that Amanda did respond already in the chat, but she said, what is the panel's thoughts on talk one sheets? Helpful, or is it not really enough content? And then the second part of this is, if someone was doing a cold outreach to you, what would you hope they said or didn't say in the opening communication? So talk one sheets, valuable, not valuable. And then if somebody initiates conversation, what do you want them to say or not say? First one to unmute wins. Dan.
I'll speak. I don't necessarily I don't think I'm necessarily looking for anything. I want to hear their story. I want to know what they're talking about. They're the professional in their story. So I don't necessarily, and maybe I'm not understanding the question, but I don't necessarily say, here, I want you to talk about this. I want to know what you're going to talk about and if it pertains to what we're doing.
And Zoe, feel free to unmute if you want to elaborate on that as well. Other thoughts on the one sheet?
I don't have like that criteria of you have to check so many boxes before I'll hire you. I think it's more of I want to know what you're going to speak on, and again, the entertainment factor. What do you what kind of energy do you have? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you. I think that a lot of us have watched videos on YouTube where someone says the key to getting in is asking to be connected with the right person first, which adds another step. And at that point, I feel like it comes across as disingenuous and with a motive behind it. So I kind of want to hear from the standpoint of how do you prefer potential speakers to build the relationship with you from a cold outreach?
I think that's a phenomenal question. If there's other thoughts from the panel, chime in there, because I think you're right, and that's part of why I'm doing this program, because I don't think those are all ill-intended or poor motivation or whatever, but there is so much messaging largely from people that want to make a ton of money off of us because it's kind of a predatory industry, right? Because we all have this dream of being, great speakers and on stage and making $1 million and all of these different things. And that's great. So there's so many people that are willing to sell us things for $5, $10, $20,000, and telling us here's exactly what you have to do. And again, some of that is good, but the value of one sheets or whatever it might be. And so it's kind of hard from our perspective to navigate through all of that and say, what do you guys actually want as event planners? How do you want us to initiate? What kind of conversation do you want to have? What kind of relationship do you want to have? And so that's what we're trying to do here is reverse engineer that. So I really appreciate that question. Any other thoughts on Zoe's question?
I think for me, I want to make sure that the speaker has a passion about what they're speaking about. I think if they're just speaking just to speak, it's one thing, but if you can show me that you have a true passion for what you're speaking on, that makes a huge difference. Because if you're just like, we talked about just reading off of a PowerPoint or just, getting that presentation to check a box off, I think that makes a big difference than actually being really passionate about why you started doing this and the reasoning behind it. What's your why?
I would also agree with that. It's an energy feed, right? So as I said earlier, I want to talk to all of you like this. I need to know your energy. I need to know your passion. I need to know that you want to do this. And it's not just because I want to make a bunch of money and I want to do it. Like, why are you doing this? And do I want to listen to you for an hour? Like, holy God, are you going to bore me to death? Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I'll be honest. As you guys see, I'm not very, I just am what I am. And so do I want to listen to you for an hour?
Yeah.
That's my question. I always have that. If I'm 4 minutes into this Zoom call and I am like, holy, I can't do this. I guarantee you won't be speaking at my conference.
Nan's always had trouble expressing how she feels. So thank you for
Yeah, I do.
opening up.
Yeah. And I work with HR people, but this is how I am.
What other questions do y'all have?
Man, we call that speak straight here at Delta Dental.
Speak straight.
I like speak straight. I definitely am that. Hi, Lisa even.
What other questions? I see Sebastian. You're welcome to jump on, unmute and clarify if you want. But he says, what are the typical budgets that you are working with? Great question, because I know they're in different places.
Yep. I think it depends on if it's a Wisconsin chapter for us or if it's national. National has a little bit of a bigger budget than we do. Obviously, because people are spending more money to fly nationally, go nationally to a conference. I would say in Wisconsin, we're pretty fortunate. We're anywhere between that 1,500 to maybe 3,000 for participants, sometimes more, sometimes less. It depends on what the content is and how long the person's going to be speaking. And we also provide all travel expenses as well.
Nana Marie, care to touch that one?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't want to jump in, but this is where you guys won't like me. I don't pay my speakers.
Yeah.
I never have. To me, when I built this conference, it's a networking opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to be in front of 600 to 800 attendees. So if your target audience is my audience, then it would make sense. If your target audience is just sort of wide open, it doesn't make sense. So we don't pay our speakers, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. 18 years is the Iowa Employment Conference. We don't pay our speakers. But I can tell you, we've had many speakers back year after year because they do get business from this. And throughout the year, I get an enormous amount of emails saying, hey, who is that guy in the Jeep? And so I then will connect them in an email and say, it's Steve, this is Susie, you guys should meet, and I walk away. So for me, it's about making the connections. And as I said early on, I've got my recruiting firm, I've got my HR consulting firm. This firm was built or the conferences were built for me for an opportunity to bid nonprofit, for-profit, and municipalities to all be able to come to a conference and get that content without spending thousands of dollars. So I don't pay my speakers.
But you get a boat ride on Lake of the Ozarks. So there's that.
We are going to be on a yacht next week.
Ugh. Marie, what do you want to respond to the budget question?
Yep. So our budget is dependent every year because we are a volunteer board. So we have, money that we earmark for that year's, expenses. But majority of the budget goes to fall conference because that's our 2-day event. Then a smaller portion goes to spring conference, and then we have our chapter meetings. So our chapter meetings, I would say anywhere between free and 2,500 is about all we have. So 2,500 is about the max you're ever going to see out of a chapter meeting. And then depending on your role at a spring conference or a fall conference, we could maybe go up to 5,000, but then you're going to be kind of our big cheese speaker. So it's a little bit more, as again, conservative government, and it does fluctuate a bit depending on our actual, allotted budget for that year, but that's kind of where we're falling. And the majority of our money does go fall conference, spring conference, and then our chapter meetings. And our chapter meetings, we always try to start out with free. We also try to alternate if we had a more expensive speaker, then the next chapter meeting most likely is going to be a free speaker, just so that we can make sure we are good stewards of our budget and are making sure we have that adequate funding to allow for our 2-day event in the fall.
And I will say, I think, one of the things, and, everybody has a different perspective, so it's just my perspective that I'll interject. There's a lot of scuttlebutt out on the internet from different speakers that of people who are insulted by an offer of fee or asking people to speak for free. Obviously, that's their right to be that way. But my perspective on this is sometimes the Venn diagram just doesn't work, right? Like all of these people are amazing people. They put on great conferences, they invest, they're trying to keep it reasonable for their people. Sometimes they're not insulting you by saying, can you speak for $1,000 or can you speak for free? It's not an insult. It's just what they have to do for their business model. So I think as speakers, I think we do a disservice to ourselves to go on the internet, to go on our social media platforms and get all angry about event planners offering, asking us to speak for free. They're not insulting us. They're just trying to make their business model work. So I would just say, as a little bit of a tangent there, because I've had event planners make comments about other speakers who have gone on rants about being offered half of their fee, and they're never gonna hire them even if they could for full fee. So just maybe a word of caution a little bit on that piece. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Okay, so I'll get off my
I would
soapbox.
agree with you, Steve. I definitely talk to hundreds of speakers year round, and definitely there are some people who just it just doesn't work. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy meeting them. It doesn't mean they're not a wonderful speaker. It just doesn't fit for what we built with the conferences.
Yeah. Yep. Andrea, I'll get to you. I got one more in the chat here, and then we'll take Andrea question live. But Lena says, I want to know and Lena's awesome, by the way. Hey, a quick thing. She does a something called Speaker Boost, noon to 1 o'clock Central Standard Time on Mondays. It's open to anybody. And it's really, another resource for you all to consider. It's sponsored by NSA Minnesota, but it's free of charge. It's open to anybody. And it's really just speakers getting together like this and talking about kind of the topic of the day or checking in with each other. So Lena is in the chat if you want to connect with her about that. Lena, I hope that's okay to mention that. Okay, good. She says, I want to know what the greatest turnoffs are when you get on a discovery call. Marie?
I don't have a good answer on that. I guess it's just kind of that's been the theme. Engaging. Are you excited to be meeting with me? Because you're going to have to bring some excitement, because sometimes picking speakers, to be honest, is not very fun. It's a task that you're kind of like, you've got a lot of pressure on it. You're trying to be a steward of that budget. You're trying to find that person that everyone's going to love. It's kind of on you when people don't. So you really almost have to open up selling yourself, which isn't a fun thing. I understand that. But like, if you want to get that engagement, you kind of have to get that hook right in there to be that engaging, excited person. Really, so happy to meet with you. It seems very kind of like cliche to say, but those are the things that are going to be like, okay, like you've got me. You didn't come on the call kind of monotone and not very enthusiastic, because you almost need that enthusiasm to get me excited to be able to continue the conversation of then, figuring out if you're a fit within, time, budget, topic.
That's good. Amanda, Nan, any big turnoffs on discovery calls?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it in the chat too. I think as long as you are, to Marie's point, enthusiastic about what you're talking about, letting me know that, what you're going to be speaking. I think budget is okay to talk about, but don't come out of the gates with saying like, I want you to pay me $5,000 to come speak. So I think don't make it about money, but it's definitely something you can talk about. Just don't lead with that.
Hmm. Nan, anything from you? Any big no-nos?
I don't know that I have a huge no-no other than um I guess for me maybe the biggest no-no is like just massive arrogance. I've
Hmm.
talked to a lot of really arrogant speakers. And again, like, do I want to spend 4 minutes with them or an hour? No. So
Hmm.
for me, it's, back to that passion. Who are they? What do they bring to the table? What can I bring to the table for them? Like I said, hi to Lisa, Steve, you guys are fantastic. You're wonderful people. Like to the core, you're good people. And oh, by the way, you also have good content that you can share at the conference. So for me, it's the personality and the enthusiasm, but the turnoff probably would be arrogance and I'm amazing. And also, well, I charge $15,000 and I've been on Oprah or whatever it is. Great, good for you. You're
Yeah.
doing good in your job. That's fantastic, but that doesn't fit our business model.
Yeah. Good. So we're going to take Andrea, then Sherry, then Karen for questions just to prepare you all and queue that up. Andrea, do you want to just go ahead and unmute and share?
Hi, thanks so much, ladies. Steve, this question might actually be more for you. So, like, let's say that you go to a conference and they unfortunately can't pay you, but like, what are your best strategies on like how to make that the most effective use of your time and expertise?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I tend to approach the conferences that I'm, whether I'm paid or unpaid, the same way. It's all about, I think it's all about positioning the audience as it's about them. I mean, it really is. And so, I mean, like any conference, I think if you're doing it for free, especially, it's networking, it's hanging out with people beforehand, afterwards, getting to know them, being personable. I think it's that old adage of people want to like you before they hire you. I think is true. But also just being authentic to who you are. I think some people interpret this, okay, well, be exciting, be engaging, be passionate, be friendly, and it's not, they take it to the nth degree and they're not really who they are. They're walking around going, hey, everybody, hey, it's great to see you. I mean, this whole thing, which I think people see right through. So I think it's just, they hired me, be myself, be who I am, but just, I think maybe just be present is maybe how I would answer that question. Be present, listen, hear what people are dealing with. And I think another piece of that is, yeah, if you're there beforehand, if you're listening, if you're asking questions, try to bring that on the stage with you. Try to use that as an example. Oh, I was talking to, Fred beforehand, and Fred was saying, boy, it's just really tough right now with employment law, whatever it might be. And, I can understand that challenge. So I think that's it. I have a follow-up system, and so I think that's another opportunity there too, to follow up with people that might want to engage the next level. And I get a lot of spin-off business from that, where it might be doing a free event, but then people say, "Hey, we have an event. We'd love to have you come speak at." But I think I don't know. I might be in a minority here, so there might be other better answers, probably from a lot of people in this group. But for me, I just posture it as it's about them, and I don't mean that like I'm playing a game. Like literally, they're asking me to speak. I'm going to make it about them. I'm going to try to invest in them. And I do think the more that you give, the more that you're present, the more that stuff just kind of comes back to you, because people say we want that presence at our conference. Yes, we like experts to speak from stage, but we really like people that add value to the whole conference because of their presence over 1 or 2 days. So that's how I would say. I don't know if that's answering your question. Okay. The panel, do you guys have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Um, to your point, I feel like there are definitely some speakers who, you are coming and you are spending your time to create content and you want to be the best at your session. But to me, it would be, I think, more beneficial to come to the entire conference, spend the whole day or the whole 2 days and sit in sessions, network with people. Hey, were you at my session yesterday? Or hey, do you want to come to my session tomorrow? Use it to your benefit. So if you're working with event planners, negotiate being able to sit in and attend the conference, because I think networking is probably the best way to get the most bang for your buck being at the conference.
Yeah. And I think, that's so good. And just kind of another thought that popped in my mind too. I feel like, and maybe not everybody does this, but I feel like for me, the decision to speak at an event for free or for fee or whatever is separate than the actual experience I'm going to bring to the event. So it's not like, oh, well, I'm speaking for free, so I'm going to give them less of myself. I feel like that's a decision to make on the front end. Is this an event that's worth my time? It's worth the travel. It's worth whatever. It's worth the connections, the potential spin like that. To me, that's one decision. And then once I've made the decision to be at that event, I don't feel like, hopefully I'm not, I feel like I'm the same person, whether it's a full fee event or a free event. So to me, they're separate. They're not like, well, you paid me less, so I'm going to give you less while I'm there. I'm not going to be part of that, that session because they're not paying me. To me, it's separate decision. You make the decision you're going to be in, and then it's a matter of being all in. That's how I view it anyway.
I would piggyback on what Nan said. I think the best part for speakers in general, especially at our national conference, ours is a 3-day conference. And, being a speaker, you do get, I saw that in the chat too, you are able to attend the other sessions. Just that networking for National IAS Day, we actually have like vendors and sponsors. We actually have a whole ballroom set up that you can walk around and talk to people. So it's one of those things where it's an opportunity for you to connect to literally thousands of people. And on the Wisconsin side, when it's a smaller conference, we do a big lunch together. So, that gives you the opportunity to maybe not say, hey, do you want to hire me? But just getting to know people, really just connecting, seeing if they have anything. I know a lot of people in the industry have speakers just come and speak either to their board of directors or to a leadership group. Like for Delta, we have a leadership meeting quarterly. And then for our group, particularly the directors and above group directors, VPs, and C-suite, we meet once a month. We talk about what's going on in the organization, what's going on outside of the world. There's a lot going on right now. But just kind of talking about that kind of stuff and bringing in speakers is always something that's on the table. So I think just that networking piece is really important.
I'm just going to kind of build on what Amanda said, but like if you were fortunate enough to speak at any of our events, I know like Steve came early. That was great. Come early. If you're our speaker, you can come early. You get to hang out afterwards. But hanging out is when you connect with our other chapter members or other board members. And that's how you're going to make those word of mouth personal connections. They're going to get you to not only speak at maybe one of our Minnesota NIGP events, but speak at another governmental event. Or a lot of us, we're government employees, people and stewardship are our thing. We sit on other boards. So you meet us at Minnesota NIGP and you might then make a connection with us and we'll have you speak at one of our other boards we might be sitting on or affiliated with.
That's great. And see, we'll go Sherry and then Karen. Sherry, if you want to do audio, you can. Otherwise, I'll read what she said here. Sherry, if you don't know Sherry, she's like one of the most fun people you'll literally ever meet. So if you don't know Sherry, you should meet Sherry. But she said, do you prefer the topic, description, and objectives be shared when we first contact you? And at what point do you prefer budget be discussed?
Yeah, I can speak on that. So I put in the chat as well. I think just be upfront with what you're going to talk about. Give me as much information as you can, but like don't, not drinking from a fire hose. Like give me the 50,000-foot overview of what you're going to talk about and who you are as a person. You can definitely talk about the budget in the first meeting, but don't lead with it.
Mm-hmm. Everybody
I'm
agrees?
just say ditto to Amanda.
Ditto.
Same. I would say the exact same. Yep.
A couple follow-up questions from here. Well, Sherry, Sherry, go ahead. Please elaborate or follow up there.
Thank you for reading my question. That was well done, Steve.
Thank you, Sherry.
I actually have
appreciate that.
another question. In general, so because I want to provide a lot of detail, but I don't want to fire hose you, and I also don't want to be like one of the emails that I get and I'm annoyed by when somebody's trying to sell me something. Is there something that you really, really just want in that initial email? And what could you do without? So I mean, do you want it to be 5 bullets? Do you want it to be, is there a particular length or anything that's not just going to annoy you and you're going to delete it?
I would say I love the bullets because, I'm a nerdy number, type A person. But if you can even just, I know it sounds corny, but even attach just like a 30-second video so I can see your personality up front without even, that gives you kind of a one up on someone that's not, is just giving you the 5 bullet points. If you can show me like what you are, not what you're going to present, but who you are as a person, just give me that, 30 seconds, this is who I am. I don't care if you do it on your cell phone, and just attach that video. I think that would give someone more of a one up, so to speak, on someone that's just going to send me a cold call email that I may be like, can't delete.
Yeah, I would agree. I think shorter the better, but if I can watch you in action, or even if you just make an introduction with a quick link of, hi, this is me, this is what I do, I want to talk to you, and here's why I want to talk to you, but make it short. I think everybody gets 4 billion emails a day. So it's how fast can I get through, and going back to, it really comes down to that personality. What do I see out of you in that short few seconds?
I agree with everything that Amanda and Nan said. I really like the idea, keep it brief, but let your personality come out. Links and attachments are great to get that additional more information. I'm also going to say this is something I learned in school, but put your photo in. People have a harder time deleting anything with your picture. So if you have your picture in there in your signature line, I guarantee you I'm going to pause faster than if there's nothing. If there is a visual, you've got me one step. And then from one of my classes in college, it was talking about pictures. People are less likely to immediately delete if there is a picture there. So throw a picture in, put your picture in there. Then all of a sudden you've already got me. It stands out against my other emails that are just text. You've got me there. There's something to look at. And then if your bullets can engage me and then have me click on your link or open your attachment, those are probably that's how my brain works when I see an email. So
thanks, ladies.
All right, we'll get to Karen. Look, just a couple of things if you didn't notice in the chat. Lisa mentioned, I think this was in the conversation about the free events. Maybe the photographer, videographer, get them to stop by. Sometimes attendee lists can be shared. So another maybe value that you can get from doing some free events. Lisa, let me know if I misinterpreted that. Sebastian was talking about the follow-up system. He uses Talkadot. I've got experience with Talkadot as well. Happy to talk about that. Just wanted to make sure that you are seeing these pieces there. And then, Karen, right before we get to yours, there was a question about Nan. Nan, you don't pay speakers, but do your speakers have to pay to attend?
No. Definitely we want you to get the most out of it. We understand that you're giving your time and your energy and your content and all that. So I would love for, if you're going to be at my conference, to be at my conference, be there, network. And to your point, we want to know who you are, but we definitely have some speakers, most of our lawyers, and they know this, they breeze in, do their thing and breeze out because they're not really there to probably network and build their business. It's just more they're coming to talk about employment law, which is what they do. So depending on what you're talking about, who you are, if the audience pertains to you should be there, I think.
In full disclosure, Nan made me pay double registration fee to attend every event. So
it worked.
Yeah, well, I'd still pay anything to be with you guys, you and Sue. Karen, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Thanks for waiting.
Sure. Well, hello, everybody. This has been so amazing. Thank you, Steve.
Oh, good.
So I'm really curious how we can support you. You've been so helpful today. What do you need right now? And I know that's a big question, but I'd be really curious to know what is the best way that any of us could potentially support you.
Are you talking to the panel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you too, Steve, but I'm thinking about the panel in particular that, I know it's a very open-ended question, but I'm always interested in who do you want to be introduced to? How can we utilize our network to help you in whatever it is that you might be looking for, and not just for speakers, but in your career, in your personal lives? Who do you want to be introduced to?
Love that.
I think for me, just telling me about these different apps and stuff that you guys have. I think that's super helpful. I was looking back now that you mentioned that, Steve, I think the Bash has reached out to me before, and then I got bombarded with emails. So I was like, whoa, it was a little bit much, but I think that part is nice. And then just making that personal connection, the LinkedIn, shooting an email. I like the idea of the picture, and I'm a fellow dog mom as well as human children, but I have a really cute golden retriever, so.
Yeah, I saw somebody put something about a cute picture with the dog in your signature. Yeah. Karen Marie, anything to Karen's point, anything that we can do to help support you?
Well, I don't know what the post plan for this is, but I would love if I could get a summary of everyone who was here with your email and then wherever your professional information is, if it's a website, if it's a LinkedIn page, whatever it is that. I would love a summary document because not only would that help me, but then that gives me information to pass on to our future board members that are coming up in the ranks of different positions. So I don't know if that's something that you're going to do, Steve, or if that's something we could get out of here. The chat is great, but the chats for me is going to stay here. So whatever we could get in like a one sheet after that I could have would be lovely.
Yeah, kind of next steps. We'll talk about next steps as we get into the next section, but whoever provides information to me, I'll put into a Google Doc so we can share with each other, any of our members, as well as the panelists there. If you haven't, I will take the stuff off the chat here. I'll save the chat. So if you haven't already put your personal information in there, if you want that shared with our panelists, go ahead and put information in there, and I will summarize that and put it together for our panelists as well. Nan, anything we can do for you? She's like, she's got everything. She's got her house.
Go into a coma for a minute. No. Yeah, no, I would also love to know all of you, and if there's any way I can support you guys, I would love to do it. So I don't know.
So we're at, thank you. And Karen, thank you for offering that. That's very generous. We're at time for, I told our panelists, 90 minutes. Great. If you guys want to stick around and answer more questions, obviously we would love that. But feel free to go on your merry way, and we're just going to have a time of networking. If you want to stick around, obviously stick around for that, but I want to give you permission to head out if you guys want to. Otherwise, we can tackle more questions, or we just kind of have more free flow conversation.
I'm going to bounce because I'm hoping to eat something for my next meeting, but thank you. It was lovely to meet everyone here. Nan and Amanda, thank you. It was nice to coordinate with other people doing events in some different areas. So thank you, everyone. And look forward to getting to see you via that one sheet that's coming up. So thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Marie. Nan, Amanda, do you guys want to take a few more questions, or do you want to head out on your merry way?
I can stick around for probably another 10 minutes or so, and then I'll have to scoot for another meeting.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's try to burn through a couple here. And again, I know that normally it's going to be the networking time, but we have so many questions. I do want to make sure that we get to some of these if we can. So Lena says, I would like to inquire about levels of service and pricing. Would you like to have a menu of options regarding service and support to help you determine what you are getting for your budget? And then, shoot, I have my scrolling lost, but she said something about, I asked this because I'm in the process of creating different offerings and that sort of thing. So what do you guys like? Do you guys like different packages with different offerings? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can speak on that. I did write it in the chat as well. So ours is really dependent on if you're a keynote or if you do or breakout sessions, would be a pricing difference. I think from the perspective of like the add-ons, if you want to reach out afterwards to those that were in the group, I think we're happy to share any contact information of those folks that were in your specific session. I don't know that we can send the entire blast of everybody that came, but I think it depends on what the length of if you're giving for like national 3-day, 3 separate ones, then yes, that would be more of a higher tier. And I also said for the Wisconsin side, we have sponsors, and granted that's a paid portion of it, but that gives you a little bit more exposure too, because you do get the full roster.
Lena, do you want to elaborate at all, or is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think it depends too on if you're negotiating with an association that's doing a conference versus maybe it's a private corporate client. I just know one of the things that I've been working on is that kind of I feel like some organizers, they just want you to like be professional, come in, give an awesome talk, hang out, but there's not a lot of like pre-event surveys to learn more about the audience or post-event support, where some organizers are looking for some of all of that extra support, or private meet and greets with key stakeholders or VIPs. There's like these extra things that some event planners are looking for that others aren't. And I'm just wondering if that is helpful or if you've ever come across that. Or am I wasting my time creating tiered pricing? I guess too is another question.
I know with Nan not paying, I think for us, we provide that feedback to you from what the audience will give you. I won't say free or part of your fee. I don't think for us that would be something that would be extra. So I don't know that you would have to do that. If you wanted to engage with us going forward, I don't think it would be a fee either. I think it would just more be of a networking type thing. So I'm not necessarily sure that you would need pricing tiered to that. Tiered to the amount of time you're willing to put forward with what you're committing to. Yes, I think that could be tiered, but from like maybe a follow-up perspective, to me, that's all still part of your fee. Your original fee.
Okay.
Okay. Well, any other, I might have lost a couple. I know a lot of people, their contacts in there, so I might have lost a couple of questions. Any other questions that people have for the panel? Otherwise, we can just open it up for other conversation. Oliver, are you jumping on here?
Yep. Hi, Steve and everybody. Oh, doing great. So just to say, great job, Steve, and I've learned a lot. Yeah. So I have a podcast I started for speakers. So any speaker that want to be probably guest, is welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. I had an opportunity to do a virtual event with Oliver to speak to some folks in Cameroon, which is near and dear to my heart. I've done humanitarian work in Africa, so that was super sweet. So he's doing work with a lot of emerging speakers around the world on those sorts of things. Well, Amanda, Nan, I mean, you guys are welcome to hang out here. Otherwise, it seems like our questions have reached their conclusion. I guess any final words from either of you, Amanda or Nan, on things that we just need to pay attention to?
I would say thank you, Steve, for having me. It's been great getting to know some of you folks and just being part of this. I would say just be yourself. If you want to go out there and you want to be successful, be passionate, be willing to share more about yourself, and just really have that enthusiasm. I think if you're able to really capture your audience, that's going to be the first thing that's going to catch someone's eye and going to hire you.
Perfect. Nan, how about you?
Yeah, I think I would absolutely agree with Amanda. I think authentic, fun, energizing, all of that fun stuff. I think I love that you guys have the drive and ambition to want to do this, because I couldn't do it. I definitely couldn't do what you guys do. So I think it's impressive. If I had to stand in front of 100, 500, 1,000 people, it wouldn't be pretty. I wouldn't be able to speak. So what you
I've
guys do
seen
is
you,
very,
come on now. I've seen you do that. I've seen you introduce events. You're awesome. Come on now.
it's not really what I enjoy. Let's just say that. I love this part. I love meeting you guys. So kudos to you guys for doing this, because I couldn't do it.
Well, Ann or Nan, I said Ann. Nan, one last thing. So Amanda responded to this already. Lena just asked, initial contact outreach to you, phone or email. What do you prefer?
Email, LinkedIn.
Perfect.
That's probably the best. My phone rings all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not really great about responding to that all the time.
Fair enough.
Yeah, email, LinkedIn, perfect.
All right. Well, we'll end the time there. Thanks for doing a little bit of extra Q&A with us. You guys can head out on your way, or feel free to stick around. We're just going to hang out here for another 20 minutes and just chat. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Looking forward to meeting all of you.
Take care.
Take care.
All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. And it's helpful for me, hopefully helpful to all of you folks. So now it's just open time. I don't have any planned. I have no questions. I have no structure. This is sort of my time off now. So if you guys want to chat about anything amongst yourselves, with me, whatever, who has some thoughts?
Steve, I just want to say, like, I'm so filled with emotion right now. I'm so grateful that we met. And thank you to Lisa who introduced me to you. And
Yeah.
it's so wonderful to have this time with these people and just to meet everybody. So I want to say thank you. And I can't wait to stay connected with everybody.
Well, good. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, Lisa's the ultimate connector. If you don't, she's on your screen there, smiling away down there. So I think there's a fair number of at least Karen and Sherry, maybe others that I met through Lisa. So yeah. And I will send out an email after this too. It'll have, once I get the video, it'll link to the video, kind of next steps if you guys want to stay engaged, what that looks like. If you decide to stay engaged with this thing, I'll have there's like a little intake form, just a super simple thing where you can share a little bit about yourself that I can share with the rest of the group. And then as always, the way that I'm wired is just feedback, feedback, feedback. So if there's something you'd like to see more of, less of, the structure change, whatever it is, please just give me that feedback, because ultimately this is about building a community of people that are kind of hungering to try to build our business or grow our business. And so I want to make sure that it meets the needs of the group. So feel free to do any of that stuff.
Hey,
Karen,
Steve, can I ask a question? Oh, sorry.
Cody, hey, what's up, young man?
Greetings, my friend. Hey, I was curious. You've been doing a lot with bureaus, and I know you asked this particular group about the bureaus. Were you connected via bureau to these folks, or did you reach out to them some other way? That's part one. Then part two is any insights that you wouldn't mind just sharing briefly with your work with bureaus.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll try to recall the three of them. So with Nan, she's the Iowa and Missouri Employment Conference. I believe there I did an RFP a couple of years ago. They were looking for speakers, and I just wanted to get connected to the HR world. So I've done 3 events for them. I think I did Iowa twice, Missouri once. They started with breakouts, and I did the main stage with them. So that was through an RFP actually, and just got to know them, and we just had a ball together. And so I think it just became, as you can see, her personality is fantastic. Her partner Sue is fantastic, and so we just so that's how that started, just with an RFP. There, the Marie with the government procurement group, she actually reached out to me directly through the website. So that was a Google search. Somehow they were looking for somebody to talk about the stuff I was talking about, and so she reached out through the website, just said, "Hey, we've got an event. We'd love to have you." And then Amanda with the IASA. So it's a national like insurance accounting and systems group, and I have an insurance background. So I believe it started with doing an RFP for the national conference. So I actually did a breakout session at the national conference that was held in Minneapolis one year. The next year was in Pittsburgh, and I went there on my own dime. I paid my own way to go there because I wanted to be in front of those folks. And so I just did a breakout with them, but was part of the whole conference. And then it was through that then she reached out and said, "Hey, I saw you in Pittsburgh. We'd love to have you do the Wisconsin group there." So none of the 3 of them were through bureaus. And that was intentional because I wanted to really focus on, the non-bureau path for the conversation today. So that's hopefully answers the first part of the question. And then, yeah, with bureaus, I mean, I don't know what specifically you want to talk about, but it's been little by little kind of getting inroads in there. Midwest Speakers Bureau in Iowa was where I kind of got my first break with a bureau. I'd gotten to know her a little bit, Angela Goebel down there. And then I think a couple of years ago, she threw me a bone, probably just to get me out of her hair. I facilitated a lunchtime conversation at the St. Paul Port Authority, I think for $400. I said, "Yeah, that's fine. Let's do it." And then kind of got on her radar from there and just kind of paid the dues. And then a couple of years ago, she invited me to be part of the speaker showcase that she does once a year. And that really opened up a lot of doors and kind of got me inroad there. So with the other bureaus, it's just been little by little, and now kind of growing that a little bit.
Would you say that's where you're still getting most of your gigs, or is it through these other outreach?
Yeah, right now it's about 65% through bureaus, either initial bookings through bureaus or spin-off from bureau events, which also goes back to the bureaus.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve, this is Lisa. Can I make a follow-up comment to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, just open discussion. Feel free.
Hi, I'm Lisa Even. Steve and I are friends. And
Well, let's not go too far.
yeah, right. Thanks, Steve. And I will say it's fun because Steve and I think, have been like similar pathing it. And we sometimes compare notes of, he was on the bureau circuit a little bit earlier than I was. I was pretty much booking, they call it booking direct. So direct with you or with a bureau. And what I'll tell you is I did an event where bureaus gave you feedback, and they really do want to see like a quick video of you in action. They want a one-pager because that's what they send to their clients. And they want your website to say what you do, because if they're selling on your behalf, they need to have like something other than you physically in the room with them. So that becomes your video, your one-pager, and your website. And their feedback for me was, you're a great speaker, but your website's like, meh. Mm-hmm. And so that was just kind of a humbling experience of like, but I'm so good. So here in like 5 weeks, I basically did my homework and made those changes. So if you're thinking like, I want to reach out to a bureau, I would say like first orders of business are like a 10 to 15 minute video of you speaking live somewhere, your one pagers, and then at least a decent website that says like, here are the talks that I give and that sort of thing. So, and I know, Steve, you had a lot of that when we first met. I was like, your website's fabulous. So it's been fun to we had like flip-flopping strengths and things that we had been working on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. In the bureau process, we'll definitely dedicate an episode to that specifically, because it is different, right? Like you heard these event planners talk a lot about we just want to get to know you. Are you a fun person to be around? Do you like your vibe? And yeah, we want you to be good on stage, but really that kind of thing. The bureau is a little bit different because they have so many things that they're dealing with. And it's like, we need to know exactly what you talk about, what bucket you fall in, what your differentiator is, a website and a video that we can show. So it's a different sort of feel for sure. Melody, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. This has been so wonderful. First of all, thank you so much for connecting. And I guess just the perspective for me that's been, I think, the most helpful is that space of doing things differently. I feel like I went to the Speaker Academy. I'm an NSA member, love the whole process, but it just didn't seem to always flow with how do I start? How do I move forward? And I think this just feels a little more organic, like you don't have to aspire to be the keynote speaker in front of 50,000 people. Right. You can be having those connections where you are genuinely interacting and engaging in a space that feels organic and helpful, and it fits with what you see as your values and your passion. So kudos to you for this. I just feel so much more like my way doesn't have to fit in the box of everybody else's. So I just wanted to point that out, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this space. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those are very kind words. I think that is congruent with what I'm trying to say with all this, because I've tried to do things all the right way, right? I tried to build my speaking career the right way, and I was like, oh, this isn't even me, you know? And I think you kind of run into that where you're trying to do it right. You're trying to do what everybody tells you to do, and it's just either it works or it doesn't work, but it's also like, this isn't even me. And I think what I've learned through this is this business is really something you can build whatever you want. Or, you mean, you can't just snap your fingers, make it happen. But if you want to be a keynoter, if you want to be a trainer, if you want to be speak to sell consulting, if you want to speak to big stages or small stages, stay local or go global, and I think that sounds very confusing, but it's also very freeing. And I think my first advice to all of us, and it can change, is to really, what kind of experience do you really want to have? Like, what do you want this to be? And I think a lot of us, we don't know because there's too many options or whatever. And so we cling to all these voices, and they're all well-intended voices, but it gets confusing and it gets, sort of frustrating. And so I think really to understand, like, what do you want out of this thing? Is it more free time? Is it time with the family? Is it just make enough money to be able to be your own boss? Is it to make $1 million? Like, what is it? And I think we start there, and that's why I want to approach this differently than you see it a lot of different places, where it's like, here's the steps that you have to take. those might work for some people, but that's why I want to reverse engineer it. And so each of us can look and say, okay, let's have this conversation with event planners and understand how they book people, and then say, okay, now taking the experience that I want to have and my own personality, my own interests, my own strengths, my own passions, my own life situation, whatever it is, how do I retrofit that with this and develop your own personal strategy? So I'm kind of saying the same thing you said, but that's really the heart of this thing, because instead of starting with saying, okay, here's the checklist of things that everybody has to do to be an effective speaker, no, be you, be the kind of speaker that you want to be, and now understand how decisions are made so that you can figure out the right path to get in front of these people. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
Exactly. Thank you again.
Yeah. And again, this isn't for everybody, right? Some people want to just be told, here's what to do. Here's the 12 steps. Here's what you have to do. And that's great. If that works for you, great. But I think this is more for those of us who are, ambitious. That's why it's called that. We want to make this thing work, but we kind of want to do it in our own way. So Lena, the great
Hi,
Lena
Steve.
Sculler.
So you guys, I just have to give a quick plug for Steve. For those of you that are thinking about this ASC journey and going along this journey with Steve, I just have to tell you, so I completed our local NSA Speaker Academy back in 2017 and went to work starting my business while I was still working full time. And I met Steve during the pandemic, and he pulled me into a mastermind, which was the first mastermind group I've ever been a part of. And if I could tell you how much knowledge, how much tactical steps, my business grew so much in those first couple of years with Steve and his group that he put together. And we all were in different places with different experience and different topics, but he's so good at connecting dots and connecting people. I'm on my third year fully self-employed as a speaker, and I fully will credit some of that to those years that I spent with Steve in that mastermind. So if you're on the fence, 100% yes, you want to be a part of this journey with Steve.
I did not pay Lena to say that, but yeah,
He did not.
But we were all just figuring it out, right? Like we just found each other, like here's the people that we need to, kind of, and we were all just figuring it out as we went. But yeah, I think it was the whole group. The conversations were so rich. So yeah, and I remember the day that you said, I'm doing it. I'm quitting the full-time job. And that was an exciting day.
Yes.
Well,
So thank you,
that.
Steve.
I appreciate that. Michelle.
They talked a lot about the entertainment value, and I think, Steve, you said something about that too, like telling jokes and entertaining people not only is not my thing, but it's also not a part of the topics that I talk about. Like, I don't mind throwing in, like, I purposely, because some of the topics that I talk about are pretty heavy, and I purposely will throw a little like meme joke or something like that, but it's not my thing. So they mentioned entertainment so many times. I'm wondering if what they're trying to do is not where I shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's like we maybe should have pushed on them a little bit on what they meant by entertainment. I mean, just, I'm not an entertainer. Like, and I even make jokes about myself, kind of self-deprecating humor about that, because I'm not gonna do all the stuff that they want to do. So I think the entertainment, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but since they're not here, I don't have a choice. I think it's really around being compelling on stage, or being engaging on stage. I don't think you have to juggle or do magic or do any of that kind of stuff. If you can, great. I don't think you have to sing. I don't think you have to make people do a conga line. I don't think you have to do any of that. I think what they mean is really just that you're going to keep people's attention, like entertaining enough to keep people's attention. So yeah, I mean, you inserting memes here and there in the heavy stuff, if people are getting emotional about your stuff, is there an opportunity for them to breathe? I think, and other people might have advice on this for sure, but I think what they mean is just being engaging more than entertaining. But
okay, yeah, so maybe that's some language that next time around it would be helpful for them to really explain what they mean by entertaining. Because compelling, I get. Engaging, I get. My engagement scores in anything that I do are super high, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it entertainment.
Yeah, that's a good. I think there are certain conferences where they're looking for entertainment. I think the three of these folks, I've never seen any speaker at any of their things that I would consider an entertainer, but the good ones are engaging. So And other thoughts
Yeah,
on that? Anybody else
I
have
was just
other
going to
thoughts?
interject. I would just interject. I think, in my opinion, the bar is so low for meetings. I mean, in reality, like I was an HR trainer and I would do meetings, and the expectation when you got the assignment to come to the meeting room on a Thursday, right, to sit in a HR performance, whatever, for 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 3 hours, it was just death. So I think when they're saying entertainment, no, the bar is so low. If you're above a warm pulse, right? If you can crack a smile, if you are, engaging enough that they actually lean forward and take some notes, that's almost entertaining. And again, I can't speak for them, but I just know my experience in doing multiple, HR trainings is the bar is so low for people to come in that, anything that makes them feel like, wow, this was enjoyable is entertainment at work.
That's so good, Cody. And the bar is kind of low. And yeah, Michelle, I would say I'm certainly not an entertainer. I do try to have a little bit of fun and try to tell some fun stories, but I think what gets me momentum is that I'm authentic and I'm accessible. Like that's kind of my brand. People feel like I'm just a regular person. I've never won a gold medal. I've never cut my own leg off or any of these crazy things that people have done. It's just me, And so I think just be true to yourself, kind of back to the original conversation, be true to yourself, but I think it's worth at least noting that if there are things that you can sprinkle in, which it sounds like you're already doing with humor or with story, those are great. But like to Cody's point, it doesn't take a ton to be in the top 5% of entertaining speakers, frankly. Yeah. Lena and then Nina.
I'm just going to add a quick perspective, and it's kind of going to be the opposite. And it's probably going to be kind of hard for, I think, a lot of us to hear. But I was on a National Leadership Development Conference committee for 7 years and helped source the speakers for that event. And I will definitely say, with that committee, if we didn't see you in person, you weren't considered. And then the other piece I think that was really important is if you didn't command big energy, you didn't get a keynote spot. We would still hire, and we paid our keynotes and our breakouts. But when you're trying to hold the attention of 800 people, they wanted, like, you had to bring the energy. And I think I've heard it said in a few different podcasts in our industry too, that if you want to, get up to those high dollar demand, the funnier speakers do get up there. And so I also do not consider myself like a comedian, but there is value in us as speakers going to things like improv comedy workshops, right? Going and doing rounds at an open mic night, as uncomfortable as it may be. Because just because you don't think you're funny doesn't mean that you don't have opportunity to develop skills in humor that will get you bigger paydays.
Yeah, that's well said for sure. And like some of those big conferences where it's like they're looking for the entertainer, they're looking for, Ty Bennett to have his kids up there doing Ninja Warrior stuff or whatever. Like I just know like that's not ever going to be me. And so we can chase after it, or we can say, that's not me. But you're right. I think that's well said. I think we can all improve our craft.
Steve, this is Lisa. Can I say one thing on that?
Yep.
You can always improve your anecdotal humor too, which I think the person that was speaking, you went away from my little box, and I think you were leading towards that of like Nate Bargatze would be a great one to watch. He's talking about everyday things that are just like, almost like your inner dialogue. And so if you can tap into being able to share, even if you're sharing a really tough story and then you're like, gosh, but my inner dialogue was just telling me, there's things that you can do that are pretty like very drop like that can bring a lot of finesse and fun and humor to even very technical type of things. So yeah, I think there's a range.
And if you haven't seen Nate Bargatze on Saturday Night Live as George Washington,
yeah,
oh my, I'm not even an SNL fan anymore. Hilarious stuff. And yeah, his approach. So I do want to end at the top of the hour. So Nina, I think you're going to have the final word, the final comment or question. I mean, all this pressure is going to be on you.
So I just wanted to share kind of, I'm getting newer to speaking. It's much more niche. I'm in the wedding industry. I have a social media agency for wedding industry professionals. So kind of seeing how I can start there and expand has been really great. I wanted to share, even though it's super niche, I have the I Do Wedding Marketing podcast. If you speak on anything that would offer value to wedding business owners, even though that may not be your niche, I put my email in the chat that Steve can give, and you're welcome, to come on if podcasts are of interest to you. Steve is going to have his episode go on soon, and just nice to meet you all.
We had a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we'll wrap up there. I know we could talk for hours, but I do want to kind of start and stop on time just so we all kind of know what to expect. So next steps, I will, if you didn't get an email from me earlier, if you got invited by somebody else, shoot me your email, steve@stevefredlund.com. Otherwise, everybody that's on the list, I'll send you out an email later kind of with next steps on where we're going with this thing. And as always, just reach out if you have any questions. But thanks for jumping on here. I know it's a risk to try something new, so I appreciate you being part of it. All right.
Thanks,
Take care,
Steve.
everybody. Have a
You're
great
awesome.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye all. Thank you all.